Hello folks, how you doing today? I've seen a few videos around about rebuilding these old RC Nitro pull starts, and I feel like it's kind of one of those things where everybody has their own workflow for it. I got this pull start here, and as you can see, it's pretty much stuck like this. We give it a pull, the rope is broken, so the pull start line is actually broken on this one. This is an HPI pull start for their Big Block 21, so this would have been out of like a Savage, probably HPI Savage monster truck. And there are a lot of reasons why you might want to rebuild a pull start. I've heard people say it's the cheap guy's way to do it, just get a new pull start. But you got to remember that a lot of these things, they've been out of production for quite some time, and the ones that you can find are very expensive. So let's just go ahead and dive into this. I have a workflow that's a little bit different from the other ones that I've seen. I've done quite a few of these over the years, so I've kind of developed this as a way to save materials and make it as easy on myself as possible. These are known for being one of the worst things to have to work on in the entire radio control nitro hobby side of things, because they are so finicky. It's like the way that they're designed, it takes practice and you have to develop a workflow to do it. If it's your first time doing one of these, you might end up having to do it a few times. So let's just have a look real quick and we'll get started. This particular one was taped up. That residue you see on there is from duct tape being left on it. So what I would generally do is use some WD-40 or even better Zippo lighter fluid. I just don't have any of that here that I could find. So WD-40 will work, and you kind of soak that on there and just kind of Q-tip the parts off as you go. In the interest of saving time, even though it's getting on my fingers a little bit and it's kind of annoying and it looks gross, I'm just going to leave it that way. The tools that we have are a couple of these screwdrivers here, a needle nose pliers, a hobby knife, of course, and a lighter. I'll show you guys what all this stuff is for. So if you look in here, there's this little Phillips screw right there, and that holds in the retaining plate for the pull start. So we can go ahead and start by removing that. I think this is a 0 screwdriver. I think that's right. Not quite a 00. That's a real small one. So you can see the little screw comes out of there. That's out, and that's good to go. Sucker's so small between that and the tape residue on my fingers. Kind of a pain. This I already took off of the pull start line, so I'm going to put it over there because it's important to keep things in order, and you'll see why as we get going. I'll pop this plate out of here. Now what this does is it keeps the wind on the inside of it without it moving around. It would be possible for us to just take out this winding in here and maybe not disturb the spring. But for the sake of this video, I don't mind if the spring comes out because it'll be a good chance to give you guys a little insight on how to rewind the spring and put it back in. So we have this out. Keep in mind what your facing sides are. If it makes you feel more comfortable, you can take pictures as you go so you don't lose track of that. You can see the spring is wound up inside here. There are other videos that address how to wind the spring. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that step. It's pretty intuitive. If you look inside there, you can see how the spring is like coiled up, and then it has these bent features in it to kind of keep it sucked into the case so it doesn't come out. You can see it's like a hooked little area of the spring that goes up into this recessed part of the case. And then this spot right here, we can address this a little bit later, because if that doesn't line up exactly with the flip side of that wind, see that there? This piece goes into this notch right here and keeps that where it needs to be. So this is our pull start line right here. Let's go ahead and unravel this. It's not super important that you get the length right. So there's what we have here, and in addition to that, it would have had this before it broke. So additionally, we got that right there. If I was to lay all this out and have a look at it, I'd say it's probably about 18 to 24 inches is kind of a golden rule, you could say, about the length of these things or where they're at usually. This little knot right here that you can see on the outside facing part of the winding as you're looking at it, that's a knot that retains the string into the inside of there. So I guess a good place to start is going to be, we're just going to pull this, and we could pretty much get rid of that, set it to the side, whatever you want to do. Now, this is kind of where my workflow starts to deviate from the other ones that I've seen. Like I said, man, there's more ways to skin a cat. You know what? More than one way, rather, to skin a cat. as they used to say back in the day. I don't know exactly where that expression came from. It's a weird one, but it works so far as this is concerned. This HPI pull start has this kind of like metal piece that the string wraps around, and then there's like a little recess for it. It's to try to keep your spring from coming out. But let's see if we can get that out of there. So I just kind of banged on it with a screwdriver for a minute from the inside up, and we got some movement on it. There we go. Okay, we got it out. Now what I like to do is kind of have a look at the way they did the knot on it before we go any further. Set that to the side, and like I said before, it's very important to keep in mind the order in which all this stuff was on here. This knot is not going to want to work with us, so very carefully with your hobby knife. I'm kind of doing just like a 45-degree cut there to try to get our spring off, or a string off of this little retainer piece right here. If you have to hold this down and do it in a different way, I don't blame you, because I just poked myself with it. So that's something that can easily happen there. All right, we have this little piece off, and we're going to set that to the side, okay? So let's talk about rethreading this, okay? So I have this stuff right here. It's called microcord, Atwood Rope Manufacturing. This is 125 feet of it, and it's lasted me probably over 10 years of doing these, and it looks like I guess I've kind of made a dent in it, but not by much. So we're going to want to kind of work backwards from the way that the stuff came off the pull start. You see, I burned the end on this, and that's actually pretty easy to do. We might want to burn the end on this and make it like a little bit pointier, I guess, and I'll show you why in a minute. So let's get the end of this nice and hot. You blow it out, put it down, and you kind of like that. And what that does is it puts almost like a little tail on it. See how it's kind of sharp and tiny on the end? If you could see that. See, I'm working around this camera. I can't tell you when the last time I did one of these videos was, but it definitely had better production value than this, and it has been a long time. So I appreciate you bearing with me while I dust off the cobwebs. I think you guys are going to end up liking this. I wouldn't have done it if I felt like I had a choice, but time for this technique to get a little bit of representation out there. So we got the T-handle for the pull start is on, and now I'm threading on this like spacer piece that it uses. If this goes bad, you could just use like some of the stiffer fuel tubing or something like that to kind of make one for yourself. Just go ahead and put that on there. It's weird working around this camera situation like this. All right, and this one here, that kind of cupped area, at least for this pull start, they're all a little bit different. Just keep in mind the orientation, how it came off. That's going to be like kind of the last thing that it uses. We thread that through here, and let's keep going. Then the next thing, as logic would dictate, the rope is going to go through the case. So let's go ahead and loop this sucker through there. And then the rope goes all the way over, and it makes its way through that little hole we were looking at earlier. Now, in a lot of the pull starts, and it looks like this is going to be no exception, this is actually one of the aspects of it that's the most difficult to do. It's like I'm looking at the hole that they intended me to put this through, and I just don't see how that's going to happen. I see this other kind of alternative hole that's over here. Oh, it's not correct, but we just might end up having to use it because this one is so... If you can see how this one is just so, like, kind of bent up and deformed. Oh, well. I'm going to give it a try. Let's try to do it correctly before we just go ahead and do it the easy way. Or the way that's possible, if you can put it that way. Oh, dude. So obvious when you actually get into it with these, why they have the reputation that they do. So for the sake of this, I'm just going to go ahead and... So you see this other kind of alternate hole that it has right there? I'll try to put it on a light background. See that hole? We can just go ahead and use that hole. Make it easier on ourselves. Where before, the knot would have probably come out right there. Maybe been tied over here or whatever like that. But like I said... Let's just kind of see if we can get this working in a way that makes rebuilding the pull start not just an absolute monster-ass nightmare, which is what it usually will be. By the time this is over with, maybe it'll be no exception. Okay, when that knot's tied, So everything that's on the pull start is in order off the rope. So we have the T-handle, this kind of spacer piece, this additional little like spacer bushing that it uses. It goes through the pull starter case and through the knot that's in the winding, okay? And then this is obviously the part that's going to hook up to your spring inside there. What I like to do on these, man, this glue bottle has seen better days, just to make sure that this doesn't come undone internally, I like to take a little bit of CA glue and just a tiny little drop. That's more, significantly more than tiny, but that's a little bit compromised, that bottle there. And then, let's see if we have a little bit of excess. I'll just wipe that off really quick. Hang on. Okay. So there's that. And then before it sets completely, so it's still a little bit malleable and can like get down and just kind of stay out of the way of the rest of your stuff. There we go. So if you look at that's nice and flush. I think this will actually work out to be okay. So then what you want to do, excuse me, you want to have a look as you're looking at the pull start here. So this would be like how you're going to be looking at the pull start as you're looking like at the back of the motor from the outside. When you pull, you'll notice that it's gonna produce a motion, like a clockwise motion as you pull, right? So you got to wind this up to match what you're looking at insofar as that goes. So for a visual aid, you look at this, you look at that, this is the way that it's going to be facing. So the spring's inside here, so as you're looking at it, as it faces you, it's actually the side of the winding opposite the one-way bearing is going to be facing you. You have to do the winding in the appropriate orientation. So that's going to be as follows. So take it like that. This is how it's going to look as it's facing you. And you just manipulate the string so that it's down inside there real good. And you just start winding the string. Alright? Wind, 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 wind. Keep going until basically, I like to keep going in here. There's no real such thing as it being too long until it starts to interfere with the movement of the pulley on the inside of the case. So you have all the string you can get, and that way if you ever want to tighten it or pull out a little bit of extra string or increase the tension, which we're basically going to see how to do here in a second. See, I'm just kind of pulling more and more line out as I go. And when you look on there, it looks pretty good, you know, it doesn't look bad. It beats the hell out of paying like 50, 60 bucks for a new one of these or some other one off eBay, I'll tell you that, especially when manufacturers stop making them. So once that's done, you take this. Now we're looking at the inside of the case, right? So this is going to be oriented so that the one-way bearing section kind of faces you. Carefully, carefully. Kind of have an idea where this is going to orient to. Because we're just going to kind of rotate this once it's in, facing the spring. And when it drops in and makes its connection, you'll feel it. And immediately you'll start having a little bit of tension on that spring. It will work. Hopefully it will work. And if it doesn't, okay, you know what? We got it. All right, so see, we got it onto there. It notched into the spring. We're already having like, yeah, just a little bit of spring action. See that? So it's recoiling on its own. But we can't celebrate it too much yet because we do not have the guard back in place. So let's go ahead before we go crazy on anything. It's just gross with all this tape residue. I'm feeling more and more like I should have cleaned this. But like I was saying earlier, it's not often I get the place to myself. Everybody's out of the house, at school, or work, or doing something much more productive than what I'm doing over here. But nice day off situation to kind of get this out there. Because I've been rebuilding a lot of these pull starts lately, and it is a huge pain. And there's not many resources available insofar as like different techniques and instructions on how to do it. All right, anyway, now once that's on here, you see that we have our backplate installed on here. Keep it from moving. And we're getting already this pull start action kind of out of it. So let's take our spacer, put it down onto here. So we got that there. Take our T-handle, put it all on down to here. So now it's like all the whole assembly is kind of looking good on there, right? Now, this is important. Right now it's under it's not under any pull or anything at all, okay? It's just kind of hanging out in there. We're going to want to take the pull start, move that before I get a little bit, another rude awakening this morning from that one. We got this with no tension on it whatsoever. So let's grab our little doodad over here, right? Pull yourself out about probably 4 or 6 inches, something like that. And you can kind of test it out by holding the string in place. This has about like 4 inches of tension on it now because I pulled the string out. Now that feels pretty good. It retracts nicely, pulls the handle back. You know, I think I might just go ahead and go with that. So now, giving myself enough room to go ahead and tie the knot on it. And whatever you do, do not let go of this. In fact, let's go ahead and like modify the workflow over here a little bit. See if I've got... I guess, you know, you could tie this off too. You could tie this off to like a screwdriver or something like that if you really wanted to. So just in the interest of playing it safe, let's go ahead and do that. So I got myself about 4 inches of extra line there. Cut that off. You know, I'm just going to loop a little knot into this line here without letting that come apart. So I'm just kind of holding it with my hand back towards the back there. Of course I'm holding it with my hand. What else am I supposed to hold it with? Alright, so you see we got this little knot here. It's just a very simple little like overhand type knot. Slip that through there. Get your little guy and kind of split the difference with your fingers. And what I'm going to do is I see that string sticking up right there and I got everything else. I'm just going to use my teeth and pull this loose end. And there you go. Okay, he's on there. Now, like I said before, we don't want this slipping and we definitely don't want this coming off because this is now what's holding your entire pull start together. The whole pull start, end to end, kind of relies on these two knots. Otherwise, it'll just fly apart. So let's put a little bit of CA glue on that. Put it down into your pull start handle like it fits, okay? Now you got this kind of like long wild line coming out of the end of it. We just hold it down, give it a quick zip with the X-Acto knife, and boom, there you are. A freshly built, working HPI 21 pull start.